WWE just crossed a line nobody expected. Drew McIntyre was sitting inside his car, windows sealed, engine humming, mind somewhere between adrenaline and exhaustion, when the night split open. From the shadows, Cody Rhodes appeared, not smiling, not playing two cameras, moving with a purpose that felt frighteningly real. The door flew open. No words followed, only motion, only fury. The sound of metal, breath, and bodies colliding echoed far louder than any entrance music. In that instant, something shifted. What looked like another rivalry snapped into something personal, raw, and unsettling. Fans froze, commentators stumbled. And backstage, silence followed like a warning. This wasn't about rankings anymore, or titles, or pride sharpened for television. This felt like a release of something bottled too long. Cody's face showed no celebration, no satisfaction, just resolve, as if a decision had finally been acted on. Drew, stunned, tried to gather himself, but the moment was already gone. Phones came up, clips spread. The wrestling world watched in disbelief as a carefully maintained image cracked open. People rewound the footage, searching for a clue, a hint, a reason explaining why Cody crossed that invisible line. Inside arenas and living rooms, reactions poured out fast. Some saw betrayal, others saw justice. Many saw fear, because when a man who built his legacy on honor finally abandons restraint, it suggests a deeper wound. Comment sections filled with the same question, whispered in different languages. What pushed him here? Older fans compared it to moments when heroes stopped caring what the crowd thought. Younger fans felt unsettled, sensing they'd witnessed something not meant to happen yet. Backstage, the mood turned heavy. Crew members avoided eye contact. Wrestlers who prided themselves on toughness felt uneasy. This wasn't planned chaos. It was emotional fallout happening in real time. No one rushed to spin it. No quick explanation arrived. And that absence spoke volumes. Drew was escorted away quietly, anger simmering beneath shock. Cody vanished down the hallway without looking back. That night, wrestling stopped feeling like controlled spectacle. It felt like a human story spinning out of control. And somewhere between that slammed car door and the silent corridor backstage, a rivalry crossed into territory where wins and losses no longer mattered. The air held tension long after cameras cut away. People sensed consequences coming, even if they couldn't name them yet. When someone finally asked if this was still wrestling, nobody answered. They just knew the story had begun. Not with an announcement or a challenge, but with a choice that could never be undone. Whatever came next would demand accountability, reflection, and pain, drawn out slowly under the brightest lights. Every rivalry has a spark. This one had a scar. And scars, once revealed, never stop aching, even when applause tries to drown them out. The night closed quietly, but nothing else would. Not again, not ever. Something permanent had started. Everyone felt it, even those pretending not to, especially them. It showed clearly enough, forever. By morning, the footage had already gone viral, but what spread even faster was what wasn't said. No official statement, no apology, no justification. WWE's silence was louder than commentary. Fans dissected every frame, slowing the moment Cody pulled the door open, studying his eyes like they held answers. Some noticed anger, others saw hurt, a few saw relief. It divided people instantly. Support turned into debate, debate into chaos. And in that chaos, Drew McIntyre became more than a victim of an ambush. He became a mirror. Inside the locker room, whispers replaced jokes. Wrestlers who had shared roads with Cody remembered a man who carried pressure like legacy armor. The son, who promised to finish a story bigger than himself. The leader praised for patience. And now, that image bent under scrutiny. Some wondered if this was always inside him, waiting. Others believed Drew had crossed lines long before the car ever appeared. No one agreed. Everyone felt uneasy. Media outlets jumped in with speculation disguised as concern. Headlines spoke of control lost, temper revealed, a hero changing color. Analysts argued whether Cody had damaged his own myth or completed it. A myth, after all, survives pain. Drew's name trended too, but differently. Fans remembered everything he had said in recent weeks. Every smirk, every quiet jab, every reminder that being chosen isn't the same as deserving. Suddenly, words felt heavier than fists. Away from the arena lights, families felt the ripple. Cody's circle worried not about punishment, but purpose. Was this a breaking point or a turning point? Late-night calls went unanswered. Drew, meanwhile, leaned into silence. No interviews. No posts. Just distance. That absence unsettled people more than anger would have. Because silence suggests preparation. The attack had shifted power, not physically, but emotionally. Cody now carried questions he didn't ask for. Drew carried expectations he didn't want. The rivalry was no longer about who was tougher, it was about who was right. And righteousness is a dangerous currency in wrestling. It fuels passion, It blurs lines. It convinces men they are justified in anything. Backstage leaders tried to restore order, but order felt artificial now. You can't rewind moments like that. You can only live with them. And everyone could sense that when Cody finally spoke, it wouldn't be polished, it wouldn't be corporate. It would be human, messy, honest. Until then, fans waited. Not for a match announcement, but for acknowledgement, for proof that what they saw mattered. The car attack wasn't shocking because it was violent. It was shocking because it revealed something usually hidden. Wrestlers bleed emotionally long before they ever bleed physically. And once that truth leaks out, it stains everything. The storm wasn't coming. It had already arrived. People just hadn't realized they were standing inside it yet. When Cody finally appeared again, the arena noise didn't sound like cheers or boos. It sounded uncertain. He stood in the ring without theatrics, without music lingering to protect him. Just a man and his thoughts, exposed. He didn't deny the attack. He didn't glorify it. Instead, he paused, letting the silence stretch long enough to feel uncomfortable. That pause said more than excuses ever could. He spoke about weight, not belts, not wins. Weight. He talked about carrying a name that isn't just his. About hearing doubts whispered louder than praise. About being told repeatedly that someone else was more real, more dangerous, more worthy of leading the future. Drew McIntyre's words hadn't cut deep because they were insults. They cut because they echoed fears Cody worked every day to outrun. Fans listened differently now. The story slowed. Emotions didn't rush. Cody admitted he wished the moment hadn't happened the way it did, but he didn't regret why it happened. That distinction changed everything. Regret is about image. Reason is about truth. And truth, once spoken, makes conflicts impossible to simplify. Drew responded days later, not in fury, but with calculated calm. He framed the car incident as proof. Proof that Cody couldn't handle pressure. Proof that the heroic mask cracks when challenged. Drew didn't need to shout. He let the audience decide which version felt more authentic, and many did. Quietly, the rivalry became less about confrontation and more about identity. Who defines strength? Who decides worth? Is control, power, or is vulnerability? These questions hovered over every segment, every stare-down, every indirect mention. The ring became a stage for philosophy disguised as storytelling. Veterans backstage reflected on past wars that started similarly. Rivalries born not from championships but from erosion, from words spoken at the wrong time, from mirrors held up unwillingly. They knew where this path leads. Not just to matches, but to moments that follow careers forever. Fans rewatched the car footage again, but now through a different lens. It wasn't chaos anymore. It was context. The door opening looked less like rage and more like release. That terrified some people, inspired others, because when someone stops running from doubt, they either collapse or fight back. Cody and Drew occupied separate emotional lanes, but they were on collision course. Both believed they were right. Both believed the other represented everything wrong with modern success. And when belief hardens like that, violence doesn't escalate suddenly. It grows slowly, patiently, until impact feels inevitable. The atmosphere changed weekly. Smiles stopped feeling safe. Respect felt conditional. And through it all, fans sensed they weren't watching heel versus hero. They were watching two men fighting over meaning, over legacy, over whose truth survives when the arena lights finally turn off. Nothing felt resolved. That was the point. This wasn't a rivalry begging for an ending. It was a story demanding consequence. As the weeks unfolded, the tension stopped living only in front of cameras. It leaked into hallways, travel schedules, and locker rooms shared by men pretending not to notice. Every accidental glance felt deliberate. Every silence turned heavy. Cody and Drew no longer needed to appear together to dominate the narrative. Their absence from each other became its own presence. Fans began choosing sides not based on popularity, but reflection. Some saw themselves in Cody's exhaustion from expectation, from always having to be worthy. Others aligned with Drew's resentment, the belief that opportunity is often mistaken for destiny. This wasn't a good versusable divide, it was personal alignment, and that made it dangerous. Online debates turned emotional, not tribal, emotional. People argued not about who would win, but who deserved peace. Those are arguments without compromise. WWE tried balancing the story without dulling it, but sharp edges don't round easily. The more they tried to shape perception, the more authentic the conflict felt. Cody's family presence became subtly visible, not mentioned directly, but felt. Responsibility weighs differently when legacy watches quietly from the stands. Drew, on the other hand, leaned into isolation. He traveled alone, trained alone, spoke only when necessary. His calm felt intentional, almost surgical. Two methods, same goal. Backstage, concern grew not about control, but aftermath. Fights like this leave marks that last beyond bell times. Careers shift, reputations age differently. Some veterans warned that once you turn something personal, you lose control of how you're remembered. When the match was finally announced, it didn't feel triumphant, it felt inevitable. No music swell, no grand reveal, just confirmation. Fans exhaled collectively, like tension finally had direction. But direction doesn't mean relief. Sometimes it just means clarity. Promos remained restrained. That was scarier. Neither man needed to sell the fight. It had already sold itself. Their eyes said everything words avoided. This wasn't about proving dominance, it was about survival of belief. As the date approached, even casual viewers sensed the shift. This wasn't filler, this wasn't spectacle-first storytelling. It felt like watching something fragile being tested under pressure, something human. The car attack that started everything barely appeared anymore, and yet, it hovered over every moment. Not as footage, but as memory. The kind that reshapes decisions quietly. The kind you carry into confrontations you didn't ask for, but can't escape. Win or lose, neither Cody nor Drew would leave unchanged. That truth settled in slowly, like realization after an argument that goes too far. Some lines, once crossed, don't invite return. They demand evolution. The only question left wasn't who would stand tall. It was what version of each man would walk away. And whether fans would recognize them when they did. The night of the match arrived without chaos, without spectacle beyond necessity. It didn't need fireworks. The energy was internal, heavy. When Cody and Drew finally stood across from each other, there was no trash talk, just recognition. Two men understanding that the moment didn't belong to the audience alone. It belonged to everything that had led here. The bell rang, and it wasn't explosive. It was deliberate. Every move carried intent rather than speed. Each strike landed like punctuation in a conversation long overdue. Fans noticed something unsettling. Neither man looked satisfied when gaining advantage. Victory wasn't joy. It was justification. As the match progressed, exhaustion replaced anger. And in that exhaustion, honesty surfaced. Cody fought not to prove himself right, but to silence doubt. Drew fought not to dominate, but to validate resentment. Neither motive was clean. Both were real, and real motives hurt more than scripted ones. When the match ended, regardless of outcome, the reaction wasn't celebration, it was reflection. The crowd hesitated before responding. They'd witnessed something closer to truth than entertainment. Cody sat in the ring afterward, breathing heavily, staring at nothing. Drew rolled to the floor, expression unreadable. There was no closure in gestures, no handshake, just distance. The next day, the car attack resurfaced in discussion, but differently. It wasn't framed as scandal anymore. It was framed as a catalyst, the moment everything stopped pretending. In hindsight, fans realized it wasn't the attack that changed everything. It was the honesty it forced afterward. Wrestling thrives on moments, but legacy is built on consequences. Cody didn't become a villain. Drew didn't become a martyr. They became complicated, and complication is uncomfortable in a world that prefers simplicity. Weeks later, the story lingered, not in clips, but in tone. Promos grew quieter, matches felt heavier. Something had shifted across the roster. Vulnerability had been exposed, and it couldn't be unseen. In interviews, people stopped asking who won. They asked who changed. That's rare, and telling. The car door opening had looked violent, loud, sudden, but the real impact took time. It unfolded slowly, in conversations, in silences, in glances away from cameras. Sometimes, history doesn't pivot on championships. Sometimes it pivots on a moment someone chooses honesty over control. Cody Rhodes made that choice impulsively. Drew McIntyre responded deliberately. And wrestling, just for a moment, felt less like performance and more like confession. That's why fans will remember this not as an attack, but as the moment the story stopped protecting its characters. And once protection is gone, whatever remains is real.